What is the most bizarre thing you've caught yourself doing after your brain's autopilot misfired? Vigorously picking my nose while holding a cigarette and driving. Crammed lit cigarette up my nose. I once took a drink of Coke from a straw, but was expecting a drag from my cigarette. Wrong pipe. I was getting ready for work and had a contact in one hand and a vitamin in the other. Popped the contact in my mouth and washed it down with a glass of water. I'm sure the stomach acid took care of it. Did you shove your vitamin in your eye? When I was around 13 or 14, I woke up in the middle of the night, in my own bed and room, and thought to myself, I need to go home before my parents realize I'm not home. So I sneak out of the house. Part of me obviously aware that my parents were sleeping and I needed to be quiet, and walked a block away. Then I realized I had been in my own room and just thought, what the heck am I doing? So I walked back and snuck back into bed. So weird. Painting a picture. Take a drink from the paintbrush water instead of my coffee. Or rise your paintbrush W coffee and don't notice until your paint looks odd or you drink your coffee. Swished my mouthwash for a solid 30 seconds and then just spit it on the floor where I was standing. Last night I picked up a box of cereal to put it away. I ended up accidentally taking it with me to bed. I once got my car impounded via brain autopilot. I lived across the street from a gas station and didn't drive very often. Once I was filling it up, went inside to buy something, forgot I was getting gas, and walked home. A few days later I reported my car stolen since I couldn't find it in the apartment garage. About a month later I get a call from the police, saying my car had gone up for auction and only then was it discovered it had been reported stolen. I had to pay about $1,500 in impound fees to get it back. Definitely one of the dumbest things I've ever done. The night before my very first day at work where I have to bring my own lunch, I got all the ingredients out to make my sandwich for tomorrow, and immediately after I made it I walked into the living room, turned on the TV and ate it. I had to read this twice before I realized that you meant that you ate the sandwich and not that you tried to take a bite out of your TV. The two that come to mind are while playing Xbox I got up to get a drink, then sit back down and can't find my freaking controller. I'm tearing cushions apart, looking under stuff, looking in drawers, etc. Turns out I took a soda out of the fridge and put the controller in the spot I took it from. The other one happened the other day. Drove home from work, parked, went upstairs, opened the door, started to take off shirt. Then I remembered it was the middle of my shift and I hadn't left to go home, but just go buy a drink. Was jogging late at night. A guy reached out his hand in front of me as I passed. I high-fived him. Turns out he was hailing a taxi. Rubbed aftershave in my hair and put gel on my face. The worst part was that after I put the aftershave in my hair, I laughed at myself, thought, frick, what was all that about, and then added the hair gel to my skin. You were already in too deep to turn back. I had a very long day of computer drafting. Think plus 12 hours sitting and staring at 0.5 mm lines, and got really lost, so I asked the person next to me what the heck I did wrong because they seemed like they would absolutely have the explanation. I got most of the way through the answer before I realized not only had I asked my frazzled reflection a question, but I also calmly and matter-of-factly responded. I went home after that, applying deodorant on my armpit with my shirt still on. I just took a shower, applied deodorant, and then dried it off with my towel because it was moist. Edit. I should add, this was a roll-on deodorant. It's supposed to be moist for a bit. I meant to put a brand new roll of toilet paper on the roll and instead just plopped it in the toilet. Frick it. Close enough. When I was in high school and living on the family farm, I used to feed the horses and barn cats every morning. Waking up at 6 AM for this as a 16-year-old guaranteed that I was half asleep. So, I grabbed the cat food like I always did, walked to the table where my cat's bowl was like I always did, and poured some in. My cat always jumped up on the table right away to start eating right away, and one morning as something jumped up in front of me I absent-mindedly pet it as usual. The hair felt a little rough, so I looked down and instead of my friendly orange cat, there was a skunk, just chilling there eating the cat food while I pet its back. As a teenager, I worked at McDonald's. My McDonald's was 24 hours and During the summer, I worked the overnight shift. My sleep schedule would get all messed up. My parents woke me up for dinner one evening. I zombie walked to the table and sat down. My dad asked me to say grace. I bow my head and say, "Thank you for choosing McDonald's. May I take your order?" I really want there to be a part 2 where you start saying grace at someone in the drive-thru. Turned around and went back home because I forgot my car keys. I was driving. My mom has a car with a touchless remote entry and ignition system. I was driving her the one day and dropped her off at one shop while I went to another a few k's away. As I was getting out, engine already off, I realized who had the keys. Grabbed milk from the fridge, grabbed a dinner plate from the cupboard, began tilting the gallon jug toward the dish, was about to pour myself a plate of milk when my mom walks by and asks what the frick I'm doing. A friend of mine brought me a bowl of juice once, 5th grade-ish, and then me and his family made fun of him for a few years. I drank out of the bowl. Tried to turn the sun off, bad hangover, opened my back door, feeling for the light switch, no light switch. The light was day. I posted this up a little further, but I tried to turn the sun off with my TV remote one morning. I was very frustrated when the sun was still blinding me and my TV kept turning on and off. Workplace, work department. This is Pokey RJ. How can I help you? And then I realize I'm answering my personal cell phone at home. I recently spent 10 minutes on the phone with StatuFarm trying to pull up my policy, getting increasingly annoyed at the fact they couldn't find my policy number. Then I remembered, I have Progressive. Never had State Farm in my life. I worked at a major Canadian telecom company. I frequently had customers call in yelling about their Bill TV lineup internet speed, only to eventually find they were with our competitor. You'd think it would make a convenient opportunity for sales, but most customers were so embarrassed they'd just hang up. I used to work at McDonald's drive-thru, 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, so I had been hardwired to say, "Welcome to McDonald's. How can I help you today?" every single time I heard the headset beep. Straight up Pavlovian. One day there was a particularly wily fly that was always just a second ahead of me. I became very focused on killing this fly. I don't know how many times I said it before a coworker finally stopped laughing long enough to tell me, but it turns out I'd been saying "Welcome to McDonald's. How can I kill you today?" to every car in the drive-thru. Not one customer even paused or acknowledged the fact that Ronald McDonald threatened them with murder. They just wanted their goddamn nuggets. I work at Sears. During a transaction one time, a guy was paying with a chip card when he asked me what time the store closes. I tried to say "You can remove your card and the store closes at 9 o'clock" simultaneously, which resulted in "You can remove your close." Drove 20 minutes to my old house after I moved, was just zoning out. I lived in the same building my first 2 years of college. First day I was in a new place, I ended up at the old building and it took me 7-8 swipes to figure out why my key card wasn't letting me in. Once I was laying in bed very tired watching TV. All the characters on the show piled into a car together, and I thought for a second, crap, I forgot to put my seatbelt on, before realizing I was safely in bed and nowhere near a car. Talk about immersion. Drove to work and realized when I got to the parking lot that I forgot to drop the kids at school. The kids knew too and stayed quiet thinking they'd get to miss school. Love those sneaky little shoots. I'm a barista and I caught myself trying to pour coffee into a cup sleeve, not attached to a cup. I've thrown laundry detergent in the dryer on multiple occasions. I'm also used to starting the morning coffee for the whole office at 6 AM in the morning. One time I was late and autopiloted to the kitchenette. I tossed out a pot of freshly made coffee and started another pot. This wasn't my own autopilot, but the most bizarre has got to be when an ex-girlfriend's dad dropped off my ex's kid at my house. I've only met the dad a handful of times before. He just drove up to my driveway, let the kid out, waved at me and drove off. After an awkward phone call, we ended up getting pizza and hanging out until the ex got off work to pick her son up. I can just imagine a guy standing in his driveway, confused as heck, as his ex's kid walks into the house. And of course when you go in, he's got his shoes off, feet propped up on the couch, and SpongeBob on. I mean, you can't just put him back outside, haha. I dropped my pants when going through TSA. For those who fly in the super early morning it can be rough. I purposely didn't drink coffee so I could sleep on the plane. I was on the security line and did the normal routine of taking stuff out of my pockets and putting them in my laptop bag. Then off with the shoes, placed on top of my luggage. Then off comes the belt as usual. Then of course when you take off your belt you take off your pants. I nope damn it. Put them back on and WTF'd for a moment as I finished up in security. Luckily not that many people fly at like 430 am. Edit. Thanks for the gold. I just did this a week ago. Took the belt off, unbuttoned, and started unzipping and the TSA guy was like, I'm gonna stop you right there. That's not really necessary. I felt like such a jackass. I made the best ever chicken stock, lovingly simmered for 24 hours. Then, without thinking, I put the colander in the sink and tipped the stock down the drain, saving the scraps. I cried. Did exactly this with some awesome pineapple cider I'd made after I added the rum. Good rum. Also cried. Trying to get into a random person's car because I thought it was my friend's. The person whose car I was attempting to break into was very terrified. It was 2 am and way past bedtime, and I'd pulled an all-nighter the previous night too. While finally clearing the table I was playing video games on, I decided to put all the water bottles away that had been out for days and days. I tossed the empty ones but my cat was being rambunctious and trying to open the trash can, so I picked her up. I was holding my cat and putting some unfinished water bottles back in the fridge. She struggled free and hopped onto the counter but I was too tired to scold her so I continued grabbing huge amounts, 6 or 7 at a time, both hands of half full water bottles from the counter and into the fridge. I picked them up. I put them in the fridge. I pick them up. I put them in the fridge. I pick her up. I put her in the fridge. I close the fridge. I take 2 minutes to finish up the dishes. I turn off the kitchen light. I hear faint mewing. I wake up. I open the fridge. She is so cold, but she is okay. Now every time I open the freaking fridge she climbs in. Sometimes I don't notice her and she's trapped for a moment until I hear mewing. And I know it's all my fault. Edit to clarify that I don't just start new water bottles halfway through. It's over days and days. The fact your cat keeps going back in amuses me to no end. I was playing guitar and reached to grab a cracker. Then I ate my pick. I sat there at an intersection in suburban Palo Alto at 11 PM, patiently waiting for the stop sign to change. I sat at a green light for a full cycle waiting for it to change to red once. Cars were backed up for a block or two. I was making ramen noodles and a pitcher of Crystal Light at the same time. Berry flavored ramen is not good. I woke up from a deep sleep having the feeling that there was an earthquake going on, so naturally I called to my wife, who I realized was in the living room reading, and asked her if everything was okay, and she asked why. I said there was just an earthquake. Is everything okay? She said no, you just farted in your sleep and woke yourself up. I went back to bed. During a period when I was unemployed for a few months, I got into the habit of undoing my trousers before arriving at the bathroom. This led to a very embarrassing situation I found myself in when I became employed again and just undid my belt and trousers in the hallway while heading to the toilet. Thankfully I realized what I was doing before I exposed myself to my new co-workers. I used to do that when I was younger. I thought it was time efficient. One time my family traveled to Iowa and we stopped at a McDonald's. They were going through the drive-thru but I needed to pee, so I went inside. I went out the other exit when I was done and there was a red minivan just like ours, so I went to my side and opened the door and wasn't paying attention. I sat down, buckled my seatbelt and realized it was a bit different, but I still did it. I looked around and the van was full of old people just staring at me. They all looked scared. My family was in the van behind laughing their asses off. I took the metro home, then realized I drove to work. That was a long night. That sounds like a problem for morning you. When my son went off to college, I was stuck in the same routine that I had performed day in and out for close to 18 years. For some reason this truly threw off my entire thought process for weeks. One morning I got up and turned on the coffee pot like I normally do and walked to his room to wake him up. However, instead of flipping the light on and telling him it's time to get up, I crawled into his bed and went to sleep. I woke up 6 hours later with both my daughters in the bed with me and the smell of burnt coffee permeating from the kitchen. I honestly didn't think his growing up and moving out would have hit me like that. I eventually stopped making extra breakfasts and trying to wake up someone who wasn't there. It did make me think of my own mother though and how she felt after we grew up and left. Let's just say that now whenever I'm looking for my phone, the first thing I check is to see if it's currently in my hands. How I always do this. These days I was using my phone's flashlight to find my phone, then I realized. Walked home from the shops, then remembered that not only had I actually driven but my house keys were still in the car. Drove my car to the student union to pick up a package, parked with my hazards on. After I got the package I got food and proceeded to walk back to my room and play GTA for 2 hours before getting a call from university police saying to move my car. Whoa, my university would have just towed my car and given me a ticket for good measure. Cereal in the fridge, milk in the cupboard. Ugh, yes. Or I'll put leftovers in a Tupperware container and then put the container with the leftovers back into the Tupperware cabinet. This has caused some serious disappointment. I found myself taking a bath with all my clothes on. Never told anyone. Just went back to sleep. I've stepped in the shower in my socks before. I'm not a morning person. Turned up at work with the landline phone and my toddler's lunch. I bet your toddler switched them out. When I was in high school I worked at a McDonald's. Most of my time I was on drive-thru taking orders. You get the script down and go into autopilot every day you get to work. One day I'm taking an order and tell the man his total like always and tell him to pull forward to next window. It takes me about 5 seconds of staring at this man to realize that I am talking directly to him instead of over the headset. It takes about another 5 seconds for my brain to realize that I am working the front counter and there is no window for him to pull ahead to. These McDonald's ones are hilarious. You have been visited by the healthy spirit of exercise. Boy, you will burn all calories today. If you comment blessed be the health hound, like and subscribe, you magnificent person.